Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for a video channel. Thanks for being here. This is a missing person segment. And we're going to step it up a little bit today. I would call this a graduate level investigation that we're going to go through. Because it took me 2 weeks to figure this one out. And it wasn't funny. And the results aren't funny. I'm just saying. But before we get into that case, some people did some really nice things. A man named Marty. Hey Dave, I knew you were a fisherman, but it never dawned on me that you were a fly fisherman. That's me. There's something we have in common, so I went through my collection of flies and picked out some I thought you might be able to use, such as streamers. My go-to fly is always a woolly bugger, so I've enclosed some of them, which I have tied. That's cool. I don't know which dry flies you might be able to use out west, so I didn't pick any. Keep up the work, ignore the negative folks. I wear my Liberty hat when I go out and about here in New Jersey. Marty, thank you. And there are some beautiful flies. Now, many of you may not even know that people tie their own flies. And I consider it an art. And that is one part of my brain that never developed. And I go into the fly shop, I talk to the experts, and they tell me which fly to buy. That's how it works. And I'm very careful because flies are expensive. So, Marty, thank you very much for doing that. And fly fishing is different than bait fishing. And bait fishing is different than lure fishing. Bait, you use a salmon egg, you use a piece of meat, you use a worm, and you throw it out there in the water and you sit there and you kind of hope that the fish bites it. A lure, you throw it out in the water, you let it sink a certain amount, and then you retrieve it with your reel. And it's during that retrieval process that you hope the fish bites the lure. Fly fishing is all different, much more concentration. You take the fly, and if it's a dry fly, you throw it out there in the water. It sits on top of the water, and you play it as it goes downstream, and you have to watch it, and you watch the fish come up and take the fly, set the hook, and the fun begins. I like fly fishing for a multitude of reasons. If you know how to fly fish correctly, the fish doesn't swallow the fly. You can lip hook it. And if you use a barbless hook, you can take the hook out of its mouth with really no damage to the fish. And that's what it's all about. And I greatly appreciate that part of fishing, that I can release a fish and know it'll fight for another day. As many of you know, I collect patches. Police, fire. I get them from all over. You guys send them in to me. I appreciate it. This comes from Southwest Harbor, Maine. Hi, Dave. As a member of the Civil Air Patrol, I appreciate all the good things you say about CAP. Enclosed is our new squadron patch for your collection. Nick. Here's the patch. Now let me tell you something about Civil Air Patrol and why I say all these good things about them. First of all, it's not hard to think good things about the Civil Air Patrol. They are a group of private pilots that donate their plane, their expertise, their gas to go out and search for you. And they work in conjunction with sheriffs, state police, National Forest, Park Service. They've saved so many lives I can't even tell you. And anytime I can do anything for them, I will, because they do it out of the good grace of their heart. So, thank you. Thanks for the patch. It's a cool patch. You guys did a good job. All right. Now there's only one case today. And you're going to have to pay attention, because this one is a doozy. And if you're in Australia, sit down, grab a croissant, maybe some tea, sit back, put your feet up, close your eyes, because this case is out of Aussie land. It involves a young girl named Betty Cloutt, 3 years old, went missing May 10th, 1932 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She went missing from her grandmother's plantation. Now, her grandmother owned a decent piece of land, surrounded by walls, had large gates. You got the feeling from all the articles that the grandmother was fairly wealthy. Now, they called it the Marksville Estate, and it was south of the city of Belmont in Australia. So just so you guys know, this would be the east coast of Australia. Here's Newcastle, Mount Hutton. Here's Belmont right here. There's a little lake there. Pelican, Blacksmiths, Swansea, Caves Beach. The family lived just on the south end of this yellowed in area right here. Water essentially surrounded the house. That's an important point. As everyone remembers, as I keep telling you, this is an important point. So, Betty, her mom and her dad lived in Sydney, and her father was a very well-known Reverend Cloutt, and he was a Waverley clergyman. And he was in the process of recovering from a serious case of bronchitis. A lot thrown at you right there. Stop for a second. Many of you, over the last several years, have said, Dave, do you have cases involving clergymen, pastors, priests, family members of them? Well, here you go. So as the Reverend was recovering, the family, he and his wife let Betty stay at the grandma's house. Well, on May 10th, while Betty was there, at about 1 o'clock, the grandma suddenly realized she couldn't see Betty anymore. And she starts searching, doesn't find anything. Calls a few neighbors to come over. They come over, they search the property. Calling her name, nothing. The gates were all closed, locked meaning latched. These are big gates, and these are big walls. No 3-year-old is going to climb over them, per the articles. Well, after Betty's grandma and the neighbors got wasted, tired from searching, at 3 o'clock, they ended up calling for the local fire department, local assistance, and they called the police department. And that night at 3:30, searchers organized, and they went out, they called her name, they searched the grounds again, and then they started searching the area around the grounds. Calling her name, not getting answers, not seeing any tracks leaving the facility, not seeing any indication that someone may have opened the gates during the day, nothing. Now the police, they arrive. They see this. I know what I would think. There's only two options here, folks. Either the grandmother did something, or there was foul play. Why is that? Because the gates are closed. If she's not on the property, then the grandmother carried her off and killed her, right? Or something else is at play that we don't understand. And right away, the police started to think this way. So May 11th, the police the day before had summoned all the area around there to come in and help search. So they had 600 people there that were organized by a sergeant that was now in charge. The local businesses were all closed and all those employees came. The local lake, which I showed you on the map, is really too far away per the searchers to come into play, so they weren't worried about that. But the searchers made many statements that they were puzzled because all the gates were secure. And at 6 p.m. on May 11th, the local police assigned an experienced sergeant on search and rescue, a man named Pryor, to take charge of the search. Well, they searched until late into that night, calling her name, everything they could. No response. And at this point, they had now searched the residences around the property and even further out. May 12th, third day of the search. Police stated the incident has, quote unquote, a veil of mystery. Their words, not mine. The sergeant stated they're convinced the child is not within 3 miles of the residence. Key points. Why is he so positive? Because they divided up and everything within that 3-mile radius had been searched already multiple times by these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been assisting. They had also brought in a Blood Hound, and that was early in that third day. Blood Hound couldn't pick up any tracks, and no tracks were seen in the dirt around the grandma's property. So even if she made it out, nothing was found. Many of the searchers and other police officers that were working the perimeter said they believed foul play had to be involved. Now, at this point, the Reverend had taken himself back. He recovered enough. He was on scene. He was talking to people. May 13th through May 16th. Searchers continued at 300 to 600 per day. And that Sergeant Pryor had requested a special black tracker that was known throughout the territory as someone who found everyone he searched for. So they summoned him from the outback. They summoned him that second day. So that took him a couple days to get there. And during this position in time, he was on scene. May 17th, Black Tracker was there and working since early in the morning by himself. At the end of the day, he sits down with the police officials and he says, I don't find any tracks anywhere, inside or outside the property. He says he's very perplexed by the lack of evidence of where Betty might be located. He said, there's no place else I could go. I can't offer any more assistance. And then the searchers, again, the police say that foul play must be involved. So let me remind you, the black trackers in Australia are equal to the Native American trackers we have here in the United States and the First Nations trackers in Canada. They're absolutely superb. They have a feeling for the land that we just don't have. The subtleties that they look for that he didn't find are troublesome. And you've got to remember these little subtleties that I'm telling you. Remember, you're a graduate level student. Pay attention. May 18th through May 20th, the police had summoned 2 new bloodhounds to come to the scene. And they brought him in very early in the morning. They let him go on different parts of the property, inside and out. And they got him there before 1,000 searchers were on scene. Dogs picked up nothing. Nothing. 1,000 searchers get broken up into different grids, and they first clear the property for the 5th time, and then they start searching the adjacent properties, moving outward, 250 on this side, 250 this side, 250 this side, 250 this side, and they're moving out. And they're covering it shoulder to shoulder. They don't want to miss anything. Now, this may seem like a like a stupid endeavor. But I cannot tell you how many times these efforts turn successful because they find something. And walking shoulder to shoulder is a smart thing to do when you're at this level of frustration. Well, so our commander said again, they feel that foul play has to be involved just because of the lack of evidence they found. The commander stated there is no way Betty is outside this realm that they've searched, and she's not inside. They questioned everybody that was in the houses around Betty's grandma's property. Nobody had seen anything suspicious. That's troublesome as a detective. Now here's the most adorable photo of Betty I found. Cute, cute girl. Surrounded by the presence of God. May 21st, May 22nd. Search efforts started to wind down. And they started to wind down because searchers stated they were running out of areas to search. They stated that almost every home within that 3-mile radius had been searched 2, 3, and 4 times. They said the main property had been searched 5 times. They found no property of Betty's anywhere. On any hill, on any mountain, on any valley floor, in any bush, nothing. And because they found nothing, and because they had found no scent trail, no tracks, they were at an absolute dead end. May 23rd. Search and rescue attempts had failed. And the newspapers came back to the grandmother's property and tried to interview Reverend Cloutt. And he said he would talk. Now, Reverend Cloutt was not only emotionally spent, but he was angry. Not at anyone in particular, but angry because his daughter can't be found. This is what he said, and I'll quote, "I will never believe our baby is out there somewhere in the scrub," meaning outside the walls, in the outback or whatever's out there in the scrub. His next sentence was, "How could she get out of this property?" And then he stated that the front and rear of the property had large, heavy gates that were latched when Betty disappeared. And then he stated, "We as the family are baffled." Yeah, I could see that. At this point, I was baffled. But again, I know too much. So let's review. Betty disappears from a secure plantation. Big piece of property, walls, with a fence, with a gate on the back and a gate on the front that's latched and secured. The first day and night, searchers scour the area non-stop, calling Betty's name, get no response, see nothing, hear nothing. Searchers close down the investigation, or close down the search, step away, and 21 days after Betty disappears, May 31st, 1932, a man named Gus Marks of Belmont, just north of where Betty's grandma's house was. And in fact, Gus Marks lives exactly 2 miles from where Betty's grandma's property was located. 2 miles, remember that. He's in the backyard working, trimming up his plants. In the backyard, he smells a strange odor. he looks behind what was called a lantan plant bush. And as he looks behind it, he sees a small child's body. It was Betty. Gus called the police right away. And this location is at the bottom of a hill. Right where this plant's located, just a couple feet away, there's a hill that goes up. Not a real steep one, but a hill. The location that she's found in, at the bottom of this hill, it was thought that Betty had to have stumbled down that hill to her location next to this lantan plant. The coroner stated that Betty was found face down, with her head lying on her left arm, just like she was sleeping. And that's what Gus thought when he first saw her. Now the hillside was about 30 feet away. And up halfway on that hillside is her shoe. And the other shoe is at the bottom of the hillside. The body was transported to the morgue and it was positively ID'd as Betty. The police stated that the yard where Betty was found had been scoured multiple times. Now, I think Australia is ahead of us in some things, and I gotta pat them on the back for this. They have an inquest process on dead bodies. Now, if the police and the coroner believe there's some suspicion associated with a death, they call for an inquest. And that's public. We don't have that in the US. Some jurisdictions never will tell the public why somebody died. Others will. Some jurisdictions release the cause of death and the condition of the body. Some don't. In Australia, almost everything is public. I like it a lot because there's not a lot you can hide if you're the government under these conditions. Well, right away, June 1st, the coroner calls for an inquest. And the inquest lasted 7 days. This is important. You're a graduate level student. Pay close attention. The coroner stated that the cause of death was heart failure due to exhaustion and exposure. Okay. Stop it for a second. I've told you before that back 50 years ago, they kind of stopped using exhaustion as a cause of death. You never see that today. Because what does exhaustion mean? What's the physical signs of exhaustion? Right. Exposure is different. Now, they stated she died of exposure. But here's the kicker. One of the coroners, Dr. J.R. Leslie, stated Betty died 2 days after she disappeared. Wake up, America. Wake up, Australia. Wake up, Canada. Where was Betty for 2 days? And 600 searchers. These are the fine nuances in an investigation that really blows a case open. Now, I would personally like to know if there was anything in her stomach when she died. Because if there was, then she was fed something during that time she went missing. They didn't say. But that meant that as these 600 people were searching, calling Betty's name, and canines were out searching for her, and she was alive, where was she? Now, they stated that they thought she stumbled down the hill to her spot and died. But she didn't have any broken bones. And they stated that there was no sign of violence to the body. Okay. So did she have scratch marks from falling down the hill? They didn't say. They also said that there was no sexual assault, but no marks of violence. Now, some of you may think that I want you to watch my movie for some profit motive. No, it's not it. No. See, I get comments on these videos from people saying, well, what does GHB have to do with somebody's death? Well, I'm sure 99% of you know. But if you're new to this, these little nuances really don't mean anything. And unfortunately, to many of the police officers in the nation, if this exact case fell in front of them, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They'd say, oh, she died, that's it, boom, 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 we're done. Put her in her grave, put a gravestone on it, and case is over. But as you know, there's much more to this case. Blood Hounds, 3 of them, never pick up a scent, and the tracker that's known for finding people all over never finds any tracks. What does that tell you, folks? Come on, be a critical thinker. Well, if Betty or somebody carried her to her location where she died, there would be tracks. If Betty walked, there would be a scent trail. Wait a minute, there was neither one. Right. So how did Betty get there? Well, if Betty was there in that area for 2 days, why didn't she ever answer any of the hundreds of people calling her name? If she died of exposure, meaning that either overheating or too cold, and they didn't explain which one, and she was gone for 2 days, then she would have been really thirsty. So my question is, why didn't she call out? She was in pain. What do you think? Well, there's only a couple options to that. Number one, she wasn't there when they were searching. Right? Possibility. Number two, she was there, but she was unable to speak. Or she was comatose. Some drugs do that to you, right? And they said that she didn't break any bones. She could have gotten up and walked away, but she didn't. She laid there. Out of all the cases I've investigated, this one case really puts a tight lid around what's going on. Even for the people that are new, you can see how all these factors come into play. Now, on Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Remember, a man, Carl, stated that he was abducted by a UFO. And then he stated that they dropped them out of the craft onto the ground, and he rolled down a hill and hurt his shoulder. Friends, of all my time making films, reading books, doing research, that one moment was the epiphany moment for me. And if you watched the movie, you saw it. Was Carl telling the truth? Oh, yes, he was. There wasn't anything Carl told me that I didn't believe. Here was a 90-plus-year-old man that didn't give a rip what anybody thought. And when you look at the totality of his case, my gosh, I feel eternally blessed. Because a short time after I talked to Carl, he died. I feel honored that I'm able to tell his story. Because it gives me great insight as to what's happened to some of these people. I'm not saying it's happened to all. But you cannot ignore the physical evidence and the lack of physical evidence that puts Betty Clout's case together. If I get emotional, it's because I get so frustrated. I can see what's happening. But I can't get to enough people to really tell them. I'm blessed I have you people watching right here, but what's happening to my channel? People being unsubscribed, people not being notified. My channel isn't growing. People out there know I should have 1 million to 2 million people following me, but I don't. I'm very frustrated. And I'm not taking it out on you. You are a blessing. And I mean that. And I feel privileged that I could even talk to you every day, every other day. Please make sure you're subscribed. And know, every other day, Dave posts a new video. Every other day. I guarantee it. I've done it that way for the last 2 years. We're approaching 600 videos now on this channel. I know some of you have complained incessantly. Old cases are boring. Old cases are meaningless. They're stupid. Well, I hate to say this, but you are the fool if you believe that. And Betty Clout's case just took the veil off of what's going on, in my humble opinion. And I hope you can see it too. So, just remember, book still selling well. Missing 411 Washington. My latest book comes with a driving map with the state of Washington and cluster zones. You can get it on our website, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. Please share this video on your social media. And remember, this is the kindness revolution. It doesn't cost you anything to be nice to people. And maybe once in a while, you'll just make their day. You take care. You are appreciated. Paulides out.